Christian parenting.
This is Cynthia Yanoff, and you're listening to Pardon the Mess. Each week we have honest discussions about the ups and downs of parenting and the lessons God is teaching us along the way. It's real, it's fun, and it's biblical. Life is messy. Don't walk the parenting road alone. Hey guys, welcome to Pardon the Mess. Thank you for taking a few minutes to chat with us today about parenting. I don't know about you, but I feel like Pardon the Mess is perfect in explaining what my life feels like right now, midsummer. We're in Dallas. It's July. It's getting very, very warm. And my first world problem of the week is that our swimming pool has been under construction since the Great Freeze of Dallas, which was like February. And so when you are in Dallas in the summer and it's hot and your pool is completely under construction still, it's a little frustrating. But aside from that first world problem, also my people around here, there are lots of spirited debates going on. Are you seeing that in your house as well? And by spirited debates, I just mean quite a bit of opinions. One child in particular is really pushing for Instagram. So we're working through that. So anyway, just wanted you to know that we're all in this together, walking this road together. And that's why I'm glad we have Danny Huerta with us today. He's at Focus on the Family. He's the Vice President of Parenting and Youth. And he's chatting with us about 7 traits of effective parenting. And I love that he's kind of giving us a benchmark to look at for our parenting, not because we want to be discouraged or feel like we're not doing it well, but in order just to have kind of goals and see where we're strong and maybe those places where we need some growth. So those 7 traits are adaptability, respect, intentionality, love, boundaries, grace and forgiveness, and gratitude. And so we will chat about those today, and be sure and check out the podcast notes because we will also have links to where you can take a self-assessment or grab the book, anything else you might need. So here we go today with Danny Huerta. Hey, Danny Huerta, welcome to Pardon the Mess. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you for coming. I'm so glad that you're here. I have to tell a funny story before we kick this off. For everyone listening, this is my brush with Danny Huerta years ago. I got to meet with him in Colorado Springs. And so that's where Focus on the Family is. And he's the Vice President of Parenting and Youth there. And so I was there coming back from vacation and I was like, oh, we're going to meet for a few minutes. And so Danny came and met me in the lobby and he's like, hey, do you want to take the stairs or the elevator? And I'm like, there. I'm only in my 40s. Of course, we'll take the stairs. I do live in a 2-story, Danny. I didn't say any of that, but I had that moment like, well, yeah, we'll take the stairs. Okay. So everyone listening, when they ask you if you want to take the stairs at Focus on the Family to Danny Huerta's office, the answer is a hard and fast no, because it's not like a flight of stairs. It's a flight and then another flight, another flight. And I'm sure he's going to correct me here, but I feel like I went at least 35 to 40 flights and we get to the top. I'm exaggerating, but it was a lot. We get to the top and sweet Danny Huerta is like, all right, here's so-and-so, meet so-and-so. Tell them, Cynthia, what do you do? And I'm like gasping. So I'm going to blame it on the altitude, but Danny, please confirm there's a lot of stairs.
There's a lot of stairs. Each person that comes here, it takes a while to catch your breath by the time you get to the office. And you definitely take a lot of steps. If you need steps though, you do. Once to come, if you need some steps from the entrance to my office, you can get those steps in.
Well, listen, I will not show up at that place again until I am like marathon ready, because I will not. And then I'm going to skip past you. I might take those stairs 3 at a time, Danny. You don't know what hits you next time I come. But anyway, that's how I got to meet with Danny the first time. It was funny. And I'm just glad you're here today. I love that you have this book out, 7 Traits of Effective Parenting. Yeah. And I think most of us midsummer are questioning all the traits of effective parenting, having been with our kids probably more than we usually are. And so I know we probably can't hit all of them today, but I just would love, well, before we even get there, let's just start. Tell us a little bit about this, your family and what you do at Focus, then we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, what I do at Focus on the Family, I'm Vice President of Parenting and Youth here at Focus on the Family, which means that I get to oversee Plugged In and Clubhouse Magazine, Club Junior Magazine. Those are kids' magazines for spiritual growth here at Focus. And then anything around spiritual growth, sexuality content for parents, just content to come alongside parents the best we can and to serve parents well. So excited to have this season to be able to serve families in this capacity. And then I've been a therapist with families for over 20 years, still continue to have a private practice much smaller than before as I
Yeah.
serve as vice president. And then I have a family of 3 teens, 18, 16, and almost 14 in our home. And then I've been married for over 23 years and just excited to be able to do what I say with my own family, right? With my kids, and in a very imperfect way. That's what we're all trying to follow God's lead and his momentum in our lives, but also in our kids' lives. And really what I found over the 20 years of counseling was that parents lacked goals. They lacked a kind of a structure of what they were going to accomplish as parents. What's that winning aspiration? What do I need to do besides being a great parent? And I noticed in research along the way that consistently research had said that this authoritative parenting style was the best way to go. And that was it. They said high levels of warmth and sensitivity and high levels of boundaries, demandingness. And I said, wow, that leaves it wide open for interpretation. And then when you look at biblical principles in Deuteronomy 6 and then Proverbs, throughout the Proverbs actually, and then in Paul's letters to the church, you begin to see these principles for us as parents that will translate into momentum into our kids' lives. And so these 7 traits are a balance of that high level of warmth and sensitivity and then high levels of demandingness and guidance for our kids. And this book is about you as a parent addressing and looking at what's going on inside of you, creating that great momentum, the 7 traits you work on because you can control that. And then from there, there's a mirroring and a result in your children. And you can't control all the outcomes of your kids. You can influence them, but they will still make mistakes along the way. So that's really the high level view of the heart behind the 7 traits. And also in the book, I tried to provide as many of the practical tools that I've used in the last 20 years with families that have worked well, and to make it a very practical resource for parents.
Yeah, that's so good. And so when you're saying that, I was thinking out something that reminded me of back when I was in a different world and I practiced law. I remember telling my husband one of the hardest things of switching from that to being in the home pretty much full time and then doing some of this, but was that there's no measuring stick. It feels like as a parent, like I didn't get the yearly bonus, or no one came in and said, hey, you won that case or whatever. Yeah. Like my measuring stick tended to be like when someone melted down in the grocery store, I was like, great, here we go. That's my measuring stick. And so what I love is that you're focusing, and it's not per se a measuring stick, but it's giving us something like you're saying to strive for in the parenting, this effectiveness in parenting. And I think when we have those we have that foundation, those goals, I think it's so helpful. We'll talk about this at some point too. And there's an assessment that you guys have on Focus website related to this. You can take this assessment to see how you're doing on these 7 traits. And so I need you to know, Danny, I was feeling pretty good about myself this morning. I'm like, I got up kind of early. I was kind of going through some of this, and before all the kids got up, I'm like, I'm going to take the assessment. And I took it and I walked away feeling pretty good. I'll tell you first and foremost, as we go through all these, they're adaptability, respect, intentionality, steadfast love, boundaries, grace and forgiveness, and gratitude. So those are the 7. And so I did the assessment, and it seemed that my highest was intentionality. I'm like, okay, good. And then I had growth, which, by the way, very nice words to say growth instead of it was my lowest. Right. My growth was grace and forgiveness. Okay. And so I was like, well, doing pretty good. And then a few hours later, I went to make a sandwich for one of my kids after his football training, and some child had put the meat, the cheese, and the bread in the pantry back in empty, like all of them. And I'm like, okay, I'm failing. These people, they're consumers. Exactly what you're talking about. But thinking consumers over here, Danny. But so let's just hit a few of these, and let's start at the top. If you had a parent listening, it's got another 5 minutes and they're going to listen to, and hopefully they're here for all of it, but they are going to hear one of the principles. Which one would you hit the hardest? What do you think has the most return in parenting of these 7 traits?
I would say adaptability. That's why we put it first. And I put them in intentional order in the book. You need to develop flexibility of mind in parenting, that things are just not going to turn out exactly how you planned them to be. And if you're inflexible as a parent, that creates extra stress that's not necessary. And as you adapt to what God is doing in your child, that wasn't supposed to happen moments splash you in the face in the morning. You're able to adjust to that and step in with grace, forgiveness, love. It sets the table for the others to come in. Now, I would say it's a close second to the idea of steadfast love, because with steadfast love, you're in it for the long haul. You know, when your kids are at their worst, that's when they're going to need your love the most. And so you're going you're going to need to dig deep into you and make sure you're taking care of yourself well, in order to step into those moments and provide the boundaries, be intentional. But yeah, adaptability is that first one that sets the tone for a parent to be able to be respectful. And then those two set the tone for being able to be intentional. Those three set the tone for steadfast love to really be at its fullest. And then from there, if you've got those, boundaries are going to make sense, and you're going to be able to enter those very well and confidently, and then on yourself and your kids. And then from there, you will need grace and forgiveness because the boundaries are broken. And then from there, you're grateful. Hey, wow, I'm invited into this amazing, transformative relationship. And in that, gratitude creates an adaptive mind. So it kind of feeds itself. And in the assessment, Cynthia, I want to point this out. I remember sitting down with our research team and saying, hey, let's form this assessment, but it needs to be reliable and valid so that it's not just a quiz. And the team said, well, instead of 50 questions, we can do it within 20. I said, what? I want 50, because if I'm going to go in, it's got to take a long time if I feel. And they said, no, we can do this 5-7 minutes. So no, the assessment was tailored down for you guys to take it in 5 to 7 minutes, and it still has reliability and validity. The team did a great job of bringing that together. And the most frequent weakness for parents, or area of growth, right?
Is area of growth, Danny. Be very sensitive, please.
Come on. Yes, I got to remember that. Area of growth. And some people have deeper areas of growth. And this one was specifically in the area of boundaries. Boundaries is really hard. Is a hard trait for parents, and especially for parents to match up on, because of their different styles of parenting.
Yeah. Okay. And I want to hit boundaries. Let's hit that. But let me ask you one other quick question about adaptability. When we're talking adaptability, you're talking about adaptability as a parent. And I think different personality types most likely are more adaptable than others. I even think in my own marriage, my husband is much more easygoing and more adaptable when things kind of go south, whereas I tend to like a little tighter ship. And so speak into that. What does that look like if we're going to work towards adaptability in parenting? Very practically, can you give us an idea of what that might look like?
Yeah. So in the book, what I use the analogy of cities. And so picture yourself as a parent, that you're a city, and then your husband, wife is another city. And what you're doing is you're adapting. You go into their city to figure out, who are you? What's your personality? What is it that we need in our roads in between each other in order to communicate well? And so that means trying to see from a cognitive and emotional perspective. So in your thoughts, if you and I were talking with each other, I would try to figure out what is Cynthia thinking about? What is she feeling? Now I'm adapting to that. What do I need to do in order to accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish? Is it guide? Is it correct? Is it teach? What am I trying to do in this relationship? And I need to think about what the experience is of the other person, and then begin to adapt. So let's say I have a talkative child, and I'm more of a thinker, structured type, and I have a talkative child that's more disorganized. In understanding that, I'm adapting to the fact that I can't expect that child to be a mirror image of me. And so I'm adapting to this flexibility of mind, that maybe there's another way to have a clean room. My disorganized, talkative child, maybe they don't see a clean room exactly like mine. What would that look like to them? And so you explore that. What would a clean room look like? And then you add your 2 cents in that. Well, I would add this, and that. And that's what I'd love to teach you, but I get it. You're not going to be, it's not going to be a museum coming into your room. And now you've adjusted your expectations, not to soften it, but to really realistically enter that, and to take into consideration the way God has designed your child in their personality. And let's say a child is super tired. They've had tons of demands, yet they forgot to do the dishes. Adaptability would say, I'm going to take into consideration all these demands and still expect them to do dishes, but maybe they need a little bit of rest, and then they do the dishes, rather than right now, because I feel frustrated, I'm stressed out about this, and so I'm just going to plow into their world. I'm going to take that into consideration, still have that demandingness, but with some flexibility, taking into consideration the reality that's there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. And that's so practical and helpful. And so that kind of leads into boundaries, I think, a little bit too, because I think a lot of us struggle. It's our area of growth, if you will, Danny. Our area of growth is that
Yeah.
adaptability, that flexibility versus the boundaries. And there's obvious boundaries we've seen that people are missing. Like we've all been to Disney and you're like, oh, wow, we've got to put some boundaries in place, parents, for everyone, your
Yeah.
kids, everybody needs a boundary. But
Everybody.
everybody, please. But then there's places in our home where, you wonder, like, do I need to, is this my hill to die on, so to speak, versus the adaptability? So talk to us about boundaries.
Yeah, boundaries. This is just really modeling for kids that there are limits. I mean, one of them is limits of your time, your commitments, you're investing in your kids, but you're also making decisions along the way. When you're investing your time, your attention, your energy to things, you want to prioritize as a parent. Where am I putting my time? What does that say about what my priority is, what my what I value most? And from that as well, do I have boundaries on my consumption of things and what I'm getting involved in that I'm telling my kids a different story about? So let's say, for instance, the most common one is with entertainment. There's some parents that watch, whatever they want to watch, and then their teenager, 17, 16, goes, well, why can't I watch that? You watch that. Okay, that lends itself to a very big conversation on why can you consume it, and as they're approaching adulthood, why can't they? What's the difference there? So the boundaries that you place on yourself really are about teaching your kids a lot about your worldview, but then also your priorities, and then your level of energy. If you're giving everything to everyone to make them happy, and then your family just gets the extras, the relationship's going to be a little shaky, and then you won't have the energy to guide or correct or any of those things that your kids need, because you're boundaryless, trying to look for love from other people.
Hey guys, jumping in here to tell you about something I'm super excited about. Practice Ministries is a dad-led dads and kids Bible study ministry. They believe at Practice Ministries that a dad's highest privilege and responsibility is teaching their children God's word, and that a great, fun, and easy way to do this is through a dad-kids Bible study. And so Practice Ministries has a library of 15 books of Bible lessons that are age appropriate for kids from kindergarten to high school. And because they're written for kids, they're easy to understand and to teach, but because they're taught by dads, they're powerful. And so they offer all of this material free of charge. It can be downloaded from their website at practiceministries.org, or you can request printed books. There's 18 language translations of their lessons, so thousands and thousands of dads around the world are doing these Practice Ministry Bible studies. They would love for you to start your own in your community, so if you're interested, please contact them through practiceministries.org or email them at practiceministries@gmail.com. I also am excited to let you know that all this week you have a chance to help Pardon the Mess keep going strong and encouraging you in your parenting journey, and that's by giving a donation to christianparenting.org. Pardon the Mess, as you know, is part of the Christian Parenting Podcast Network, which we like to say has a podcast for every parent. But reaching over 500,000 moms and dads with trusted biblical guidance every month comes at a cost, which is why I hope you'll give a special donation today. Besides producing podcasts like Pardon the Mess, Christian Parenting also develops books, workbooks, prayer journals, blog resources, and other practical tools to help parents like you and like me become the perfectly imperfect parents God created us to be. I want to share this message of hope and freedom to more and more moms and dads, so please consider giving today by texting CPGIVE to 474747. Again, that's CPGIVE to 474747, or you can also give by visiting cpgive.org. Christian Parenting is 100% donor funded and relies on listeners like you to support the future creation of parenting resources. So please give a special donation this week to keep Pardon the Mess and Christian Parenting going strong. Respect was another one I think that hit me hard when you were talking about respect, and when I've read through the book and talking about respect. And I think most of us think in terms of having respectful kids, which is critical to have respectful kids. But then it occurred to me when you were talking about how we need to be respectful of our kids, in one way, maybe that we don't do that well, is we're not completely there. We're not present. And I was thinking guilty. I mean, I feel like I can do 12 things at once, Danny. Like I can listen to you and look at my phone and whatever. But that really, I think, stuck with me, the respectfulness, not just that we want respectful kids, but it starts at the top. So we got to look at that too.
Oh man, there's so many things going on in our minds. And I know my wife is a thinker type of personality. That means she's got tons of things going on in her mind. And I can tell when she's in that place. And there've been moments I have several stories here, Cynthia, of me not listening the best I could. And one of the analogies I use is the trains of thought. And I remember picking up my daughter in junior high, and I'm this relational counselor, and this is what I'm supposed to do super well. I pick up my daughter, super excited to pick her up, but a lot of things were going on in my mind. And I said, "Hey, honey, how'd it go today? Excited to hear about your day." So she was excited to share with me, and she just started sharing a whole bunch of things. And then she said, "Dad, so what do you think about that?" Oh my goodness, I had not heard anything because I was still my thoughts, and it took a while. It was like 5 minutes, and I said, "Oh, honey, it sounded like it was great stuff that you shared. I didn't hear a word. My train of thought was way ahead. I never stopped at the station to hop on your train." And so I missed the stop, right? "Is it okay if we meet at the station? I'm so sorry. Will you forgive me?" And she said, "Dad, just don't do that again." "Yeah, I'll forgive you. Just don't do that again." And so we stopped there, and I pictured myself getting in her train. I said, "Hey, I'm hopping in your train. Everything else, I left my train. I'm going into yours." And that's a good visual for parents to use whenever you can. Just visualize yourself going in their train and seeing through their windows and what's going on. I mean, with my son recently, he was sharing some things, and I could feel myself bringing my train to a screeching halt, like, trying to make the stop to get in there. And I said, "Well, that's interesting." And I knew my brain wasn't totally there, and I could see in my son, he didn't feel very important to me.
Yeah.
And I want him to listen to me. I want to listen to him. And so this isn't about being perfect. It's about being aware of what is going on inside of us so we can be fully present with them. And that's what I say. Do I bring life-giving words into my home? Or do I just correct and criticize? Am I life-giving when I walk into a room? Am I encouraging? Am I constructive in my criticism when it makes sense to bring that in? Am I life-giving? When I go into a room, do I just see faults in people? What's going on in my eyes as I see people? If I struggle in the area of sexuality, do I go in and do my kids see me not having boundaries with how I see the opposite sex? And then I'm trying to teach them about sexuality and having boundaries there. That respect begins with me. How do I manage my life? What comes out of me? And that's that Psalm 139, that God, search my heart and see if there's any grievous way in me. And grievous, I challenge the listeners, look up that word, what grievous is. And many of us would be guilty of that. And I don't want to even use the word guilty. It's just a reality of our humanity. And we're growing all the time. Have God search that, bring it to the surface, and you go, hey, you know what? I'm going to be life-giving. I want to bring a good aroma into the room. And it's just bringing it to the surface so you're aware, so you can do something different rather than not being aware of it and running over your family.
Yeah. That's good. It made me think of, I've been reading through Luke this summer, and I said this on a different podcast recently, but after talking to Max Lucado, I'd asked him how he does his quiet time, expecting this to be like some revolutionary moment. He's like, I try to only read a couple scriptures every morning, like verses every morning. And he's like, I just want to see what's in a cup. And I was like, I mean, I'm sure he does more for sermons and all that, but I was like, okay, like I'm over here trying to, I don't know, do whatever here. And Max Lucado is like reading 3 script, verses in the morning. But this week, so I've been trying to focus, and there's the verse in Luke where Jesus talks about, what comes out of your mouth is an overflow of your heart. And what a conviction, like what you're saying, what a conviction in my own life. Just, the best parenting comes when I'm right with the Lord. And when that time is spent in a way that I know who God is in my life and what he has for our family. And then it overflows from that in my words. And so I'm echoing what you're saying. That's so good.
Cynthia, in Colossians 3:16, I love the word let in that. It says, let the word of Christ dwell in you richly. For that, it says, let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts. And that's where it all begins. Am I letting the word of Christ dwell in me richly? Yeah. Because then there's an outflow from that. And so I just wanted to affirm that.
I love that.
I love that.
Well, and so these 7 traits in this book is obviously everything Danny does and Focus does is scripturally based. And so it's so good. I want to ask you a couple other questions, but as we kind of wrap up the section on the book, can you just point everyone to where is the best place to grab a copy of it and also the assessment?
Yeah, I mean, I'd really recommend you start with going to the assessment. That's focusonthefamily.com / the number 7 and then traits. Again, focusonthefamily.com / the number 7, then traits. And then from there, you can sign up to get emails on each of the traits, and we'll send those to you in case you forgot that you access that. It's just a quick reminder. And then, yeah, you can purchase the book there on Amazon. Of course, we'd love for you to purchase it from our bookstore, but anywhere that books are sold, you can find the 7 Traits of Effective Parenting.
Awesome. Awesome. And we'll link all of that in podcast notes. And then I wanted to ask you, just kind of switching gears a little bit, but maybe not necessarily, just as someone who's been involved in counseling and then with focus and all that you see with a focus literally on parenting, what do you see now is one of the preeminent issues or the preeminent issue parents are facing? What are our kids going to be facing this generation? What do we need to have our eye on?
Well, it's the real estate of the mind. I mean, we have to enter that and to be intentional about teaching God's truth. We have a Facebook Live that's on reading scripture out loud. And that's so important to do as a family, and to engage in God's word that's still living and active. It's about having ongoing conversations around technology, entertainment, and having boundaries around that, because there's a lot of influence that comes from that into the soul and into the heart and into the mind. Then around sexuality with sex education and critical race theory and other things that are bubbling up politically and in our culture. This is a time for you as a parent, not to just complain, but to go in and really teach God's truth and engage in conversation, especially with your teenagers, on what worldview, what are the different worldviews? What is it that each one means? How do we engage with this? What's the biblical worldview? And with young kids, having that time of relationship and influence, and looking at early on a formation of humility and empathy from a young age, so that there is a relational component to your child. And then as you spend time together, influence continues to grow from you as a parent. And if you've done that and invest in your kids, you'll see that the teenage years will lend themselves to more and more conversation as they're trying to figure out their worldview. So it's the real estate of the mind. There's true warfare coming at the mind of our kids. And it's a confusing place right now for a lot of kids and teens, especially preteens and teenagers and college students. Be patient with it, be prayerful, seek that wisdom, but carve out time to have a pause and conversations, and make sure you're learning about your belief and modeling that, and then having those conversations. If you're married, make sure you're taking care of that marriage. There's a lot said in that, and that's a foundation to your family and home. Take time for dates, resolving things. If you're having issues, find some help, because that division will create an earthquake in your home, and your influence really is removed at that point, and unbalanced and unhealthy for your kids.
Yeah. Yeah. All very, very good advice. And so as we wrap up, here's my wrap up question. It's kind of personal, but here's a question for you. You have an 18-year-old, you said, right?
Yes.
Okay. Me too. Correct. Nothing makes you question your parenting like getting ready to send a kid off to the next stage of life. If y'all don't have a kid that's about to launch, then take it from me. I also have a 5-year-old, so I also know that that preschooler makes you kind of want to take your life sometimes. I get that, everyone. But as you're getting ready to launch this oldest one to college, and I look back, and the people have asked me this, and I've really contemplated, like, what did I get right? What did I get wrong? And I think there's a lot to that. And I don't live in regret, but if I had to look back and say, hey, I just kind of want to tweak for the next kid, I think the best thing that my husband and I have done is we've prayed over our kids. And that just gives confidence, knowing that in all the places we got it wrong, God got it right. He will get it right. We promise that. Right. He does things for his good, our good, his glory. But then in terms of getting it wrong, I say on a surface level, probably just too many hills to die on in this house, too many things that I fought battles that didn't need to be fought on certain things. And now knowing what I know, that there needed to be some of what you're talking about here, some of these boundaries on myself and some grace. But I'm just curious now, as you're kind of looking back over the 18 years, something you could share with us that you feel like, yeah, we got this right, and some things it's like, oh, I got this wrong.
Yeah. That's a tough one, right? To bring a surface and admit and think about. But I have reflected. Recently, we did a ceremony, somewhat of a ceremony for my son, introducing him, saying, hey, welcome to adulthood. we're excited that you can join us in this adulthood, and here are the pieces that I think are really strong in you, and I believe in you, and just kind of charging him into that, not afraid, but knowing, hey, you're equipped and you have a long way to go. And I hope that you're leaning into that relationship with God. There are 3 words that I've taught my kids. One is steadfast, just that word and engaging with that. I think they've gotten tired of that word. And then the other one's invitation, and another one's momentum. And I would say my weakness has been in this momentum. Have I really been consistent in my reading of God's word and praying with my kids, with my wife, with my family? I have not. Sometimes I was doing a PhD, I was very busy, and that would get shoved aside. And what I envisioned was in the morning, I'd be reading God's word, and then, hey, son, why don't we read together? Yeah, it didn't turn out quite like that. There was an intention, but sometimes I'd say, hey, let's do it. And then I didn't follow through on that just because there's so much on the plate. So for me, there was intentionality in the planning and not always intentionality on the follow through. Still growing in that, and we'll continue to do that. That's a refining in my world of knowing how much can a day fit. And then me really pour into those big rocks that I've intended to be a part of. So what momentums are coming at me that I need to shift aside so I create the right momentum in my family? That's been a key word for me this year. What momentum is in culture? What momentum's coming at our family? What are we participating in? And do we see the important rather than the urgent? And then what are the momentums inside of me? What are those anxieties? What are those things that I'm reacting to? And how do I bring God's peaceful momentum into my life so that I can see through that? So we've been talking through those 3 key words in our home. And then the last one is, how do we become contributors in God's kingdom? I haven't always modeled that. And I would love to continue to model that. Do I stop something to serve someone else, to contribute in their life? And I've had moments where I could have done that. And I was like, well, I didn't step into that. That'd be a great modeling for my kids and engaging with that. And so just know, as parents, we're not going to get it perfect. We have sunsets and sunrises every day. We're all growing together. I happen to be Dr. Danny, right, that talks about parenting, but in it just as much as you are. And really, I've gotten to raise these 3 kids. You're getting to raise your kids. So you're the expert in your kids. I just get to come alongside, give some pointers, some tips. It's like you're the one that's the expert. You as parents are the expert of your kids. I'm just trying to give you some ideas and maybe some insight from my experience walking the journey with families and my own family and as a therapist in education. So just praying for you. 2 Thessalonians 3, 5, and 16. Read that sometime. I hope you read it as a blessing over your family. That's 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verses 5 and 16. And if you can be a family that has a culture of respect, culture of blessing, and culture of celebration, you will begin to develop that life-giving culture in your home.
It's amazing. Thank you, Danny Huerta, for all that you do and for all that Focus does. For better or worse, I'm a product of Focus, I feel like, because my parents even had back in the ages and ages ago, the Dobson videos they played to all their friends in our living room. So Focus has done great things for 100 years or however long it's been. And thank you for all that you do. And we'll be sure and link everything to Focus, and we appreciate you.
Excellent. Yeah, visit our page. And I just want to say, if parents, if you're struggling, we do have a free phone call with our counselors here at Focus on the Family at 1-800, the letter A, and then family. 1-800, the letter A, and then family. I can't remember the numbers. I just remember that very well. But I served on the counseling team. You get 20 to 30 to 40 minutes with a counselor to talk about your unique situation that you may be having that's pretty painful for you. Know that resource is there, and it's absolutely free.
Amazing. We will link all of that in podcast notes. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Cynthia. Appreciate it.
All right. I appreciated that word on effective parenting and some traits that I clearly need to work on. One in particular, though, that I want to talk about in today's messy minute is being present. And I think that falls in between intentionality, but also respect for our kids. We talked about it a little bit on today's podcast, and that's something I've been working on in my house. And so there's 5 things I've kind of implemented this summer trying to be present, and I wanted to share them with you. And the first one is wake up early. I've been trying to wake up early. I'm not a late sleeper anyway, but my youngest gets up pretty early, even in the summer. And so just making sure that I'm awake before him so that I have time to spend a few minutes with the Lord and to just kind of get my head on has made a big difference so that I can hit the ground running when my kids are ready to. So that was my first one. The second thing I've done is I'm telling my kids when I'm not going to be present, and just being able to say, hey, I'm not with you right now. I'm going to take a second and read an email, or I need to go do something for a minute, and just letting them know. I think that makes a difference when I can actually articulate the fact that, like, I may physically be here, but you do not have my emotional or mental energy at this moment. The third thing I have tried to work on is just engaging my kids. And I don't love to play. I'm just going to be honest with you. I do not love like sitting on the floor, that Barbie stage. I love you mamas that can do that well and pretend and make believe. Not my thing. And so just always it's something I work towards is how do I play well with my kids? If that's playing ping pong with one of them, which I'm terrible at, but doing that, or if that's watching social media and talking about something that's going on with another one of my kids. And then for my youngest, yeah, sometimes that is getting on the floor and playing, but trying to figure out what they're into at any particular time. It's always changing, and being present in that with them. The fourth thing I'm trying to do is get control of my phone. That is a massive issue for me. And so just trying to figure out what that looks like, putting it in a completely different room during dinner time and after dinner when we're all just kind of hanging out, not taking it with me sometimes when we go and run errands, like as a family at night, but getting control of that phone and being very intentional when it's with me versus not, because I can say I'm not going to look at it, but if it's in my eyesight, I will look at it. And then the other thing is related to that is I always feel like there's so much running through my head that I need to do. It needs to happen. And I've just learned to make a list, and that's old fashioned. Don't do it on your phone because then you're back to the phone issue. But just having a piece of paper somewhere where I'm just constantly kind of making a list and checking things off, that helps me clear my mind so I can be present for my family and I'm not trying to keep all those balls juggling. So anyway, those are the things that are working for me. I would love to hear what's working for you as well. But being present, I think, is one of those things as a mom that is such a gift to our kids. And so I hope that helps. I'm glad you're with us. And as always, we know your days are busy. So thank you for joining us as we pardon the mess.